Thank you, Fergal, for this lovely presentation. So I'm going to share my screen so that we can get started with this lecture. Online tribalism, hate speech, and community formation. Today, we will talk about how humans become inhuman and how imaging community becomes real or feels real. What is imaging community and what I mean with the humans who become inhuman. You will understand it in the few minutes or less than an hour. So I will present first and then we get into a discussion, but I will have an interactive parts in just a few slides. So what are we going to talk about is how much we do share, human beings, but also how much we don't share. And how we are used to divide people into in-group and out-group. We will talk therefore about racism and its connection with nationalism. So a nation, we'll try to understand what is nation, and we will use some post-colonialist authors for that. And then we will focus obviously on social media, which we understand as an extended reality, which is a part of our reality. So it's not something separated, obviously, today. And then we finished with a reflection on community formation and how it happens on the media. So I start with a shocking picture, maybe, of one of the darkest chapters of history. So it's obviously and called, though unfortunately we still have very much horrible chapters in history and also in the present time. So we have to deal with problems which didn't stop at the end of that chapter, but continue and are ongoing, unfortunately. So when I was hearing about history and this dark chapter of history in school, I was thinking of these people and imagining them as monsters, who could do certain horrible things, who could be so inhuman. And though once I saw a documentary film and I came up to see these people, if you look at them, they don't look at as monsters, but no, they look as people we know, or we might know. I mean, people like you and me. Let's look at this girl. She looks like super nice, and I would like to be her friend. Or like him, he looks super funny, and she could be my neighbor, Also, this person could be any person I meet here in the shop, or this one of the girls going by bike in the parks. And this guy looks actually like the first guy I fell in love with. So, normal people, and how is it that they become monsters? So for this reason, I ask you to go on Mentimeter. So you have to follow the link that my colleague will paste or has already pasted in the chat, or you can use your cell phone and just scan this QR code and you will be there, and you have 3 possibilities to answer. So the question is, what happened? How did these normal people become monsters? Like, how did they end up supporting inhumanity? Obviously, everything is very complex, but the third things that come up into your mind, you could say them. Okay, thank you very much. Then let's see. What did you say? So we have, propaganda, indoctrination, brainwashing, peer pressure, manipulation, generalization, mobilization of masses, unaware of the future, influenced by the majority, past trauma, force of the group, staying out of danger, anti-Semitism was always, group and peer pressure, tricked, inequality, brainwashed again, group dynamics, untold intention, injustice, group pressure again, trauma from First World War, given perspective, Great Germany, so this ideal, which people thought it was good, it was important, more important than anything else. Everyone does it, so I do it. That's also a very important point. Sense of belonging, the key issue. Hitler was a good good leader thought maybe. Some of them, or for sure thought many of them. So taking someone as a great person, even if you really are not and are not able, in some cases, and in some cases you just don't do it. Really analyze what this person is doing and what its impact on other people. They needed someone to lead. Yeah, they thought at least they needed. Create enemy pictures. That's a very important point. Community formation, following the masses. The mass as a term is actually a very important term in this context. No own opinion. Yeah, so no, don't use critical thinking. Egocentrism as a nation. Yeah, interesting as a term. Radicalization, persuasion, ignorance. Gruppenzwang, which means pressure of the group. So peer pressure, no? The biggest words are the ones which have been used more. So thank you very much. All of these are obviously right. So I'll try to take some of this into the focus and lead you into understanding maybe what's also happening nowadays. Okay, so let's see. People, who are they? People, yeah, very different, very similar people. So that can be in a company, that can be in a city, that can be in the world. Yeah, we don't know them, but I'm very, very sure that they share very much. Yeah, so if we like take a line and say this is line of the gender, we can say, okay, people can position it themselves in different places, on one side, the other side, or in between, or on or outside. Yeah? And then we will notice how people come together in groups. Or we could say age, who is younger or older than a certain age, or the work they do, or some characteristic of their personality, or some role they have, like parents, for example. Yeah, so all these people share, every two of these people share, even if they are taken randomly, share very much, and also are very much different. Yeah, that's quite normal. So that's the question, are we really all the same? So now I would ask you to write in the chat what you think. How much do people in the world, like these people who are here, and the people of our group, and the people of your city, and the whole world, how much do they share in relation to their DNA? Yeah, so don't feel influenced by others. Think with your head and just write in the chat. It can be, if everyone writes 90 but you think it's 10, just write 10. If you everyone writes 10 and you think it's 90, just write 90. So really try to be independent and write in the chat. Thank you. Okay, so we have seen that many people wrote low numbers, and many people wrote very high numbers, and a couple of people wrote something in between. So it was interesting that many people were very precise with 99.9 or 99.5, and that's actually true. So these are the people who knew that. So actually, you can take any two human beings in the world, and they do share from 99.5 to 99.9, depends, but like very, very much. Though this part which is missing is also very important, because it makes every one of us unique. So here is a nice video which reflect and explain what it means and how it works DNA in a quite easy way. So yes, we are kind of all the same. Yeah, for sure, we are all part of one race. So there are not many human races. Yeah, biologically, there is just one race, one human race. But every one of us is unique. Yeah. And to understand why are we all part of one human race is that we all come from Eastern Africa, no? Where the first human beings had developed, and from there, as I say, no? Pangaea and then Laurasia, Gondwana, so the parts of the earth were all united, and then they divided in different phases of history. But for this reason, people just could migrate easily or relatively easily to different continents. No? Today they different continents. So we actually all have the same ancestors. Okay, so now you see here again, you understand why these all people share very much. We are all very, very much alike. But actually there are some differences which we don't give importance to. No? For example, how big is the food of a person? We don't really care. We don't look at the food of the person to decide how to talk with this person. But there are other differences which we give much importance to, even if we don't notice that. If we don't know, we could think, no, we treat everyone the same way. That's absolutely not true. You should test it with yourselves in the next days. Be aware of how you speak with different people. For example, different people in your family, with your friends. You probably don't speak with them in the same way than with your parents, because of the relationship, but also because of who they are. And you don't speak with old friends in the same way. And when you go outside, you meet strangers, you won't treat them in the same way if they are a woman, a man, a young person, an older person, if they have different kind of traits, or they are different clothes, they're wearing different kind of things. We perceive all of these details, and depending on that, we act and we interpret what they would like to do, what they are thinking, what they mean when they say something, and so on. So age, I said, color of the skin, and class, so how people are dressed, how people are also have their hair, and gender, age are all abilities that we can see easily, or disabilities we can recognize easily. They are all things we perceive and which are quite important for us today. So we have to remember, as not everyone, we have said we put lines, we differentiate human beings, and some of these categories take power out of people. Yeah, if you are a child, for me it's easier to tell you what you shouldn't do than if you're an older person, for example. Yeah, and unfortunately, depending on how dark is your skin, it might be that it's easier for me to deal with you less respectful than with other people. So it's actually important to remember that we all are human beings, also because people still think there are real races, which is not true. We have seen races are constructions. We are all one race. So this is an advertisement made in the region where I live, in Saxony, where there is unfortunately very, very much racism. And so it's like kind of remembering how all are 100% human beings, something very obvious, but unfortunately, 2023, it is not. Okay, so how does it happen that we put people in categories and give them more values than others? So it has to do with a social psychological mechanism of dividing people in and out groups. So it's something actually which is very important when we are children. Then it's important that we understand who are our parents and who are not, who are people I know and I can go around with, and people who maybe I shouldn't just follow and go with them, no? Because they're not the people who are going to care for me. So it's actually important to divide who we belong to and who we don't. But that's very flexible. Yeah, that's very flexible. In different situations, we could decide, and we do belong to a certain group instead of others. The problem is that as we need a good self-image, we tend to associate with positive characteristics our in-group, and then we do it also putting the negative ones to the out-group. But let's see it slowly. So the first one talking about that, at least in the Western sciences, were Teife and Turner, who developed the social identity theory. So individuals define their own identities in relation to social groups. Yeah. then Turner developed the self-categorization theory, which explains how and when people will define themselves as individual and group entities and its implications. So we don't always feel part of groups. Yeah, now I feel myself, even if I'm Team Radico Team. But at the beginning of the presentation, for example, was feeling so much Radico Team member. Yeah, so when do we do it, and with what groups we do it, and what groups we don't? No, for example, when our favorite team wins, then we are like, we won. But when we lose, we might say, oh, they have lost. Yeah. So please observe these kind of things in your daily life. How do people talk about different groups in different situations, or yourself? Okay, then why do we favor the in-group? Because this kind of identification, and also why do we associate ourselves with certain groups and not with others? Because such identifications help protecting and boosting our self-identity. We said human beings wants to have a positive self-image, from yourself. I mean, when we feel unsure, we don't really feel like going out and talking to people. But when we feel comfortable with ourselves, because we receive some compliments, for example, or we had some successes, then we feel really good and really open to the world. Yeah, so that is a really healthy human need. And we have our strategies to get it. So we like to identify with collectives, depersonalized identities associated with positive aspects. Here there is a very important term, that it's depersonalized. That means we in our head we create groups, and also we do it in the physical world. For example, a football team is really a group of people, or a working team, or research team is also a real group of people. It's not imagined, but we have the ability to see them in an abstract group form. And that means that when we see one of these members of our soccer team, for example, then we don't just see him as an individual, a unique person, but we see him as a member of the group. That's a very important point. So now we come to a very key concept for us. That's the othering concept. And to illustrate that, I gave in this platform where I can look for pictures free to use, so Creative Commons, for bad and good. Yeah, I did it because the othering represent this tendency which we have seen with in-group, out-group, to put all the bad things to the other and take the good things for us. So if I want to make sure to have a positive bid, and I have two groups, my soccer team and your soccer team, I will say, yeah, we are so good and we won the whole time, and we don't do so much false and as you do. We don't, and we are really correct every time, and we play really creative. You don't do it so well. Yeah, maybe we wouldn't do that, but actually in general we tend to do it, even unconsciously, to project negative aspects to the others, and so that the good ones are for us. So I love this picture because it's quite awful, but it's really quite typical. It's awful because really represent the good, with this angel. So it's very Christian related picture, and you have this angel which has really light skin, blonde, usually blue-eyed, in this case brown. It's an exception. So it represents the whiteness. And then on the other side we have this devil who's a red skin and has black corners, is dressed black. So it's really used unconsciously, probably, very racist pictures. Now we come more and more, you see, in the specifying what racism is. But one second, we have first to understand this othering better. Yeah, so by now this picture, what these lines mean. We can put lines in anything, any characteristic, but there are some characteristics which are very important because they are power tools. Yeah, if I use certain characteristics, you will have more power, or we will have less power in interaction, for example. And unfortunately, there are the good thing is that this, how much power a person has, changes in different situations. For example, a child might have less power in context of a meeting of adults, but inside of his kindergarten, he might have more power because with his peer, he has a leader position, for example. But there are people who experience in many contexts discrimination. Yeah, in many contexts they have less powers. For example, people with darker skins in Europe, at least, it happens very often that they do less nice experiences as white people. Okay, then we don't just have one category, but people read us through the different categories, different characteristics we have, and the different associations they have with our characteristics. So we cannot say that a woman does the same experience than another one. Yeah, so it depends on how every one of us is, right? So here a key term for you is intersectionality. So you might want to read more about that. I can put some links on it at the end of the slides, which I upload then in the Gloca campus. So the othering, reading about the othering, there are different authors who contributed to this concept, and there are some who go back to Hegel, who actually spoke about master-slave relationships. So the idea that the fact that there is a slave gives me, or that I make you slave, gives me the power to be master. If I don't have a slave, I'm not a master. Yeah, so and that is something which helps us to understand this othering, which is very much connected to power. So it's not a simple in-group, out-group, which is so random favoritism. Yeah, it could be not so influence or impact on power relations, but the othering put up or highlights actually the fact that many times the in-group, out-group division is connected with power and has big impact on relationships, on the experience that a person does in life. Okay, so a very important author in relation to othering is Edward Said, with his book Orientalism, first published 1978. And here he really goes on a collective level, pinpointing that the Orient is a construction, is a Western construction, and the Orient is actually an imagination of a reality which is very much varied and dynamic, is presenting a very reductionist and distancing and pathologizing and exotized way, which is fixed. Yeah. So that is actually a very, very important point, which helps us to get into post-colonialist thinking. Yeah, so to be aware about the imaginary, the social imaginary, which have been creating also before colonialism, but also above all in colonialism, which legitimize colonialism, and which we still live. Yeah, produce and reproduce, even very, very unconsciously. So actually, every one of us, racism, which is also a product of racism in our society is a product of colonialism. Every one of us is deep into it. Yeah, so not everyone is racist, but in everyone lives racism. So we really need to be very conscious about the images we have in our head and prejudices we have, because they have been created many years and centuries ago, but they are still very, very alive. So another person, another author who's really, really important is Spivak. Or maybe I make myself a bit bigger, is Spivak. she is, I think, very important because it helps us to see 3 different dimensions of othering. So on one side, she speaks about the powerful production of the other as subordinate. Yeah, so in this other risk, this power relationship, which is very strong, it's not just like a naive in and out group separation, yeah, which children could do while the ones are all dressed as Batman and the other as Superman. Yeah, but it has to do very much with power, and it has also to do with the production of the other as pathological and morally inferior, and third, it has to do with the other as also inferior on a cognitive level. No? So like saying that knowledge and technology is a real production of the West. Yeah, which leads to the to give less importance or to not recognize the knowledge, the amazing knowledge that that people in other parts of the world developed, and in many cases, unfortunately, were cancelled through colonialism. Yeah, was erased. So we noticed here that colonialism has a very big impact on us, on everyday life also, in our thinking. But unfortunately, we don't really reflect about that anymore. Yeah, I don't know when it was last time that you reflect about colonialism or you read about that. So actually, maybe it's an idea to maybe for you to take some time to deal with it. A very book article you could use as the first chapter of this book. Obviously, you can read the whole book, but I suggest you about the first chapter. That is from Immanuel Wallerstein. Here I brought some covers in different languages, as I know here you speak different languages. And though I think the German title is quite interesting, so the translator took the freedom to really be creative, fortunately, so that we have a really good title, which is Die Barbarei der Anderen, so the barbarity of the others. And that's the point, yeah, seeing the others as the ignorant, the barbarian, the not civilized, and making us universal, almost godnesses on the earth. Yeah, us now as European. So I like very much these 3 concepts because they help us to understand what happened and happens. So they have been developed in social psychology, and Tileaga didn't develop them, but has a very interesting critical perspective. He is coming from the critical psychology, and he explains them in his article, which you will find in the bibliography, and highlights the fact that these tendencies are not just spontaneous, or like not just there, but we make them alive, yeah, in our everyday thinking and acting. So the personalization is what we have seen before, the tendency to don't see the person, the unique person I had in front of me, but see this person as a group. So I can do anything with you because you are part of this horrible group. So, or at least I can say who you are because you are part of this group. Yeah, or I don't care who you actually are. I see you as a part of the group, and I will deal with you in this way. That leads to delegitimation. That is when you have an idea, but you are part of the group, like a group I don't really, I see as subordinate in my group, then I want to really listen to you. I won't take you seriously. Maybe I won't even give you the possibility to have voice. That happens, for example, in school. No? Often it's like this, the students are like black box to be filled, and the teacher is the one who knows everything. So why should I give you the word? Why should I be interested in what you know and in what resources actually you could share with your classmates and with me, and I could learn from you? Yeah? So we see this tendency of subordinate someone and don't really create a space for this person because we don't really believe this person should have a space, yeah, and could teach us something. And then we come to the third one, the harshest word, the dehumanization, which put in evidence, and sometimes now, as we said, we tend to project negative aspects on the other, the other made different than me. And these negative aspects can be so horrible that I come up to see the other people as something inferior than a human, yeah, like animals, or but animals risk not treating as members of the family, no? But animals in the sense of really something I can do anything with because you're not as worth as me. And it's something like people, soldiers, need to do in their head probably to really be able to hurt, to kill someone else. Yeah, so it's not a human being as I am. Yeah, it's less worth. And when they do realize that it's not that way, then it's the hard part of their life. So here I have a picture of Romnia, because Tiliaga in his work analyzes how middle-class Romanian who he interviewed talk about Romnia, and the prejudice they have and how they reproduce these three tendencies. Okay, so let's go into racism. Racism is this what we are talking about, but relating to races. So this idea that there is not one human race, but more races, which we said is not true. But we do create race, so we create groups of human beings, and put them, we categorize them first. Then we differentiate, they are the ones who blah, 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 they are the ones who, but this differentiation often is not like neutral. So we put these categories into a hierarchy. Now there are groups which we recognize as much smart as our group. So they are our friends group, our allies. And then there are the other ones which we think they're less worth than we are, okay? So it's racism working. So races don't exist, but they do exist in the sense that they are a creation which is very lively in our head. So here we have to consider that there is that is important to consider that this whole process and its all impact has a cognitive, conative, as a behavior and affective dimension. So have a dimension in relation to our rationality, how we describe things, for example, about the affective, so the emotions. So what does it do with us when we see, for example, a person who we associate with a group which is associated with something dangerous, for example, yeah? What does it do with me? Yeah, and behavior, and how do I behave in relation to these images I have in my head? So here I suggest you to watch Trevor Noah. Is a very interesting comedian who grew up in the apartheid time in South Africa, and so it's very much engaged in letting us reflect about colonialism, racism. And here is a very short video which is amazing because he succeeds into explaining us colonialism in 5 minutes and to laugh and cry at the same time. And there is also a translation Portuguese I've seen. So please, even if you have to register on Vimeo, do it because it's really, really worth. Okay, so now let's get into the social media sphere. Shiraz already a few years ago analyzed some discussions online, and out of them elaborated different forms of racism. The forms of racism he elaborated are still very up to date, and also in different regions of the world. You can find them the same. So it's very important to have them in mind. Also because, as you see now, the digital, as also my colleague last week explained, is not something separated. Yeah, once upon a time we were talking about the real world and the virtual world. That's absolutely nonsense today, above all, because nowadays the digital is just an extension. Yeah, it's an extra place I can go where I keep on living and experiencing, and so it's like a continuum with our physical world. So what we learn and do and who we are here, we take everything with us in the digital. And what happens when we are online is something that we carry with us also when we go offline. Yeah. So here, essential, he recognizes first the essentialist racism, so express disregard for members of other ethnic and religious groups, as well as for minorities in general. There is no attempt to provide a rational explanation, justification, or motivation to racial slurs. So why should I? I mean, they're just inferior. That's obvious. Yeah, so I can just like offend very easily. And here we come to an important point of the online. You know, what characterizes the online? Characterizes the fact that there is a sort of anonymity. Yeah, and that we don't really feel this, how can I say it in English? This very tight connection with the outside world. I mean, if I go on the street and I do something bad, it might be that someone reacts to me and can happen something to me. And someone can tell me stop, and people won't talk to me about anymore, or everyone will tell, oh, she did a crazy thing, you know. But I don't really feel this thing quickly happening, as not so much in the physical world. At least nobody can hurt me physically, and I can also get another identity there and do so things I want. And then also there are algorithms, so anonymity is on one side, something very special online, and also algorithms. So it is very easy that we do get into a community of people thinking like us, so that we not just strengthen our imagination in the same way, like we develop certain imaginaries and they become more and more detailed and strong and deep into us. So we get confirmation about our way of thinking, our information, our perspective on the others and on the world. But also we get actually a positive feedback on that. Yeah, so what's the problem? If I am in the right group, then I can just write horrible things and they will say, yeah, great, yeah, you're right. And then other people will do horrible things, and we will feel very comfortable with each other, and it will be very nice to be there and just like sharing horrible things. Yeah, so that is something that's happening. And that's very, very important. I would like to shortly deep into it. So Chiraze speaks about essentialist. So essentialism is when you think people, there is an essence, have an essence which is relating to its group. So if, for example, I see I can say Germans or Italians or Brazilians are like this. Yeah, the whole time we're talking about that. So the Italians, they all drink coffee, or they all speak loud, or they all whatever. And I really sometimes I come up to think that I can really know a person just because I know their nationality. Yeah. But not like just nationality. We could take the women, how women are and how men are, or how all students are, or all people in that city are. Yeah, so we really tend to create groups, put people in these groups, and think we can describe them because of their categorization. Yeah, and many times it's made through what we think race is. Yeah, so we see a person, and depends on the physical traits, we think, oh, I know what this person is. Or religious, some religions are particularly special, like Islam, and there is very much Islamophobia, and when I see a person with a scarf, I might or a hijab, I might think I know what this person think and do and whatever. So we project so much on people depending on what categories we put on them. But actually, and nations, no? The nation is also super important for us nowadays, to imagine who we are talking with or are going to meet, or I'm very much more interested in the constructivist perspective on identity, where actually that actually highlight the fact that we are a construction, we are that what we become every day. So we don't notice that we are different than yesterday, but we are different than yesterday because every time, not just our body changes, but our body changes also because of what we do, but also the rest of us is changing, yeah, because we are getting into lectures as this one, we are meeting friends, we are getting some news, we are reading some chats. So we are transforming every day depending on what we experience and what we decide to experience and what we just experience because by chance. Yeah. So we don't notice that. I don't notice that I'm another person than yesterday. But if I look at 2 years ago or 5 years ago or 15 years ago or even more, then I notice so much how much have changed, and not just like physically, but the things I like, how I speak, things I know, perspectives I have, and so on. So this plural, this identity, this changing identity is something also we don't really realize when we see someone. No? In Italy, for example, it's so normal to say, "Oh yeah, in my class I have a Chinese, a Moroccan, and an Albanian." It's like, huh? They are children and they are growing up in Italy. Why are they Albanian, Chinese, and Moroccan? They are Italian as you are. And it's but they are still called and perceived as strangers. So it's a very horrible thing, putting people into boxes, and there are boxes which you really wouldn't like to be in, like as a stranger if you're growing in a place. I mean, okay, anyways, so keep in mind these points. I think I clarified enough. Though now we come to an important point. We don't speak very much about races, at least in Italy and in Germany above all, because we should know actually that they don't exist. But we saw that they do exist in terms of social constructions. Okay. But as we don't say, oh yeah, that race is horrible, because we cannot say it, fortunately, then I was saying unfortunately, because in my head I was imagining people would do it. But we use the term culture, and culture, already Balibar in 1988 was saying that we are using culture as a word, as a synonym of new race. Yeah? So be very aware when you read things. Oh yeah, people from other cultures. People are not from other cultures, they're from different countries, but every one of us is not just one culture. Otherwise, all German or Brazilian, all Italian would have the same values, the same. We would be all clones, yeah, in a nation. But you obviously know that you are different, even from your brother, sister, parents, neighbor, best friend, yeah. And that we are changing the whole time. So please be very aware when you use the word culture, because it's not just national culture. There are so many cultures which influence every one of us. Yeah, your family culture, your university culture, your school culture, your regional culture, your local culture, your friends group culture, and all these kind of cultures you experience, you get to know. For example, let's think of hip hop. Yeah, it's a transnational culture coming in now, or when you watch Netflix or whatever, American movies, like you are absorbing so much of many cultures, which then you share with many people in the world. Yeah, so sometimes actually we are much more similar with peers in other countries, with students in other countries, researchers in other countries, than with another person in our country, which is very different in terms of age and job and so on. Yeah, so don't forget to see the diversity of reality. Because it's very, very easy to see it about ourselves and our friends and our country. Obviously, I'm not just an Italian. I'm not just like one of 60 millions, and it's the same who you pick. That's very clear to us. But when we speak about the others, then suddenly we forgot that. And we think we can really speak about the Peruvians and the Ecuadorians and or the Latin Americans or the migrants so be very, very aware and help people to get out of their boxes. Okay, so we have then populist racism as a second form of racism, Shirazi is speaking about. So openly racially legitimized as advocacy for native people whose rights, housing, work, security, and health are supposedly threatened by immigrants or minority groups. So here you see, now we are dividing actually people who live in the same place, and they are there and they are joining our social life, and you would do it even more if they would feel accepted and comfortable, and the doors would be open, and they have the papers maybe also to just work and study at university or do other interesting things. But if we still keep on, that's the problem, what he noticed, this racism, we put barriers because we said they might be dangerous. This connection between security and migration, I've never understood that. Or they bring illnesses, which actually is not true. They're all single people, individual people. So how can we generalize? But we do it. Or like, for example, there are not enough beds in the hospital because these people also go to the hospitals. If there weren't these people, then we would have more beds for us. And it's like, is the problem that the people are here? Or is the problem that we don't invest very much in the health system and we should fight about that? So it's like populist racism put people one against each other instead of having to see, okay, what's actually the real problem. Then we have identitarian racism. The identitarian discourse provides that immigration and minorities pose a threat to our cultural identity. So this invention of culture, like we are all one culture, which I think, okay, if I should become as a German when I came here 20 years ago, who should have become like Jan or Jana or Christoph or who? The one who are vegan or the one who eat meat, the one who burp in the street or the one they don't, or who should I take of these 80 million people in Germany and to be like to, so it's completely absurd. But so that is what identitarian racism is selling out and reproducing. So that there are values, customs, lifestyle, beliefs, which are all the same for us, our values. The other have horrible values, which even if we look at the religions, for example, we have all the same values. So it's actually beautiful to read about other religions because you really see that. So it assumes integration, assimilation, and cultural difference as an insurmountable obstacle that they cannot face and in any case refuse to deal with. So this idea, they don't want to adapt. What are we talking about? And to adapt to what? And are you sure they have different values? And if yes, it's maybe a problem of sexism, for example. It's a problem of sexism, which we have in every country. Is really a global culture, for example. So let's fight that. I'm great. But not say that they are the ones who are sexist, for example. And so let's see who is all here actually sexist, and let's help people to get out of it. So far-right racism is kind of a racism Shirazi recognized online, which mixes the whole different kinds of racism and rearranges them all into a single ideological standpoint. Far-right racism has been able to convert many stereotypes as well generalized hatred toward the other into a consistent and robust nationalist political theory. So now we come to the connection between racism and nationalism. Before we get deeper into it, here a suggestion for an open access book. And in this, there is an article, and there are many different interesting articles, but there's one I wrote where I actually speaks about this and this racisms and show that actually, for example, in Latin America, there are the same kind of racisms, not just in relation to migrants. There is also very much a relation to indigenous people. But actually, there are many empirical studies that show that that refer to this kind of racism. So it's actually a topic which is very, very close to all of us. So they often, now the connection between the racism and nationalism, they often racialize practices of othering, act as the constitutive reference against which nationalist politics in the West orients itself. So, contrary to most classical reckonings with the subject, it will be suggested that nationalism is rarely just or even primarily a politics of belonging. It will instead become apparent in her article that its political mandate most often rests on assertions of non-belonging, wherein nationalism is a politics of exclusion that renders the often rationalized other the outsized object of political anxiety. What's saying the author here is that nationalism works very much creating these others. Yeah, because through the creation of this other, through exclusion, the people feel united. Yeah, we are the good one. We have to fight together. So let's not fight anymore against each other and try to make maybe like to make long or discuss with each other, like to make long-term changes, which so like let's not deal with real problems of society. Let's just like feel united against them. Yeah, which is wonderful to feel united. But the problem is against someone that doesn't help. Let's feel united in trying to create a more just society, or in trying to create a sustainable society, and not just like feel united to fight them. Okay, then here you can, I suggest you really to read Nation as Narration. Is a very important book. Of the post-colonialist realm. Excuse me. Okay. So culture and this book is from Baba, Nation as Narration. So it puts in evidence how nation is a very young concept, and it's a very young creation. The world could be thought in very different ways. But nation exists nowadays, and they exist because they are tightly related with narrations connected to them, which make it real. So nation as a discourse, nation as a category of practice. So the idea of the nation, writes Balaban, comprising its many myths, symbols, nominal values, and also the historical events that it ritualizes as iconic, becomes only something that is told, said, gestured, and performed. Nation is namely only a narration, but a narration with formidable institutional backing and consequences. So it is important what is said, and it is important how we deal with nationalism. It is important if we have an exclusionary nationalism. It is important if we speak of the Italians and the Germans and makes differentiation. We have to watch out, given that it is in the name of the nation that the modern state is said to exist. Yeah, so we are using this narration, and it's it can be maybe useful for certain things, but it's also very dangerous. Okay, so for me, a very important author is Anderson, who speaks about emerging communities. So most of you might know this term already. Balibas use a similar idea, fictive ethnicity. So both are talking about the illusory sense of national community that takes concrete shape, yeah, cutting across divisions of geography, gender, politics, class. So all this variety we have in society is kind of gets homogenized, creating a sense of national community, which itself, as said, is beautiful. It's beautiful to feel part of a community. We all need to feel part of a community. But the question is what is its impact and how do we do it? Yeah. So national identity has a spatial dimension. Yeah, it's a deep horizontal comradeship. Yeah, so we have a geographical space for that, but it's also a temporal dimension, which is not often thought about. So it's a claim on transhistorical time. We feel connected with our ancestors and also our future generation, even if we don't know either the ones or the others. Yeah, but we feel like, we have done that. and we. So it's about, our lecture is about getting very conscious about the fact that nation is a narration, and the fact that reality is very much complex, and the fact that nations can be very dangerous. So here, Hobsbawm is very famous for his invention of tradition. So like the fact that he, not he invented tradition, but he speaks about that, because we really think, oh, we are losing our tradition, and we should keep on doing them. And it's important, it's beautiful. Tradition is wonderful. The people who love them, or some of them more than others. But the problematic becomes when we think we should just stick on it, because otherwise we are lost. Because it's normal to change, and the tradition wasn't existing once upon a time. Some point was being created. And what tradition are we keeping, and why? Yeah, also tradition, like for example, free days. What kind of festivities we have? Yeah, when don't we work? For example, in Berlin was introduced the 8th of March as a festivity. People don't work. To remember how important it is to fight for women rights. Yeah, in other places, this is not in Thuringia, where I work. It's a festivity is the Day of the Children. To say children are so important in our society. We really should respect them and support them to become great adults. Yeah, and to have a great childhood. So festivity, look at the festivities you have, what they try to remember, and why are they important, or why this should be changed. Festivities are just an example. Streets name, what kind of streets name we have, what are they trying to remind us about? So here's maybe an interesting term for you, is imaginary, social imaginaries. Our related colleague to Redico is Yolanda Lopez, who works very much about them, and also go into seeing how these are creating online. So from imaginary into imaginary. Yolanda Lopez Garcia. Okay, I can maybe give you a link to one of her works. Okay, so let's go back and remember, okay, we're all human beings, so we really have to support each other and support ourselves to be aware of where our actions and our wordings and political wordings and action, or the action and wordings that our family use, our friends, have an impact. What are they producing and reproducing? So important is also to consider that all human beings are really human beings, not just because we are all same DNA, there are no races, just one. We are all unique and all precious and all have the same dignity. But also we all really have the same need of being appreciated, loved, to have friends. There is just a few really evil people who probably had a horrible childhood, but most of the people are lovely people. They don't really know. You remember the picture we saw at the beginning? They don't really mean to hurt the others. But they want to be appreciated. They want to be accepted. They want to also to protect each other. So then we come up to do horrible things. So interesting, and the connection was this Maslow pyramid. I don't know if you know it already. It's also criticized and also been further developed, but I think these are real enough for us and really useful for us, and because of what is seen, it's also real. It's not real. It's actually real that we have, all human beings have the same needs. Even this mean one, he also have need to be appreciated and have friends. So EU's in a conference here in Leipzig in 2019 was talking about the fact that populism works very much with creating a clear enemy and projecting resentments on this enemy. But on the other side, and that is no less surprising, but more surprising, the fact that love is part of it. Because when we do it, it's actually because we want to protect our family, our friends, our community. So if you are telling me that they are dangerous, then I really should do something. I don't want that they hurt us. I don't want to make they bring illnesses or unsafety, and I don't want my daughter is in danger when she goes out. Yeah, so if I really believe that everyone is dangerous outside, who doesn't have my nationality, then I really have a reason why I become a monster, you know. So for this reason, it's very important to understand that this monster, this enemy, is not the enemy, and we cannot generalize anything. So love is very important, because it's something that moves us to also do bad things because we feel threatened, okay, or we feel that someone else we care of is threatened. That's a very, very important point. And this great professor from Tel Aviv, she published recently this book in which she really put in evidence the emotions which are undermining democracy, yeah? And bringing us back to that horrible chapter of history. So here a video you can watch and get more into this topic. So now coming to the last part of my lecture, I would like to use two books that Bauman wrote, and the second one was published just after his death. And the first one was written in 2000, where we had a feeling of opening, and everything with the internet became so quick, and we could travel easily, at least people from Europe. We could have relationship with people in other countries really easily, and economics became global, more and more global. Online shopping was easy to do. So we could start to work also in other parts of the world and going to conferences and so on. I mean, that happened also before, but 2000 was a really, as he describes here in his book, this liquid modernity. So everything felt so light. This condition of constant mobility and change. But this reflected also in relationships, which became more fluid, identities, which became more fluid, and also global economics. Almost 20 years later, he writes something else. He writes about retrotopia. So he puts in evidence that this being open and network in the global world and fluid creates also insecurities and anxieties, which led many to give up on the effort of building a better future, a sustainable one, and turn towards the retrotopia, retro back of an ideal past. Yeah, when we had a dictator that was so good. Once upon a time, that was so easy. And it was easy. It wasn't easy, but it was easy. We didn't have this getting news the whole time. We didn't have to answer messages the whole time. We couldn't read 100 millions of books because we didn't have access to all of them. So we didn't feel we should do it. And we couldn't even. And so everything was like easier in this sense. On the other side, wasn't easier because life was also hard, had other kind of challenges. And people weren't just happy. And today we wouldn't really like to dress the things people were wearing years ago, or listen to the music they were listening, or just living with the maybe less freedom we are living today, and so on. But we love to think it was perfect once upon a time, and we would like to go back to it. Obviously, not everyone, and obviously also not so consciously, but this going back to closure, to close up, it's too much. I'm getting lost. Who's my network? Who's my community? Here, nobody's talking to me. Everyone is looking at the cell phone, for example. These are things we are missing. We feel lonely. And now I'm obviously generalizing, but that's like tendencies which bring people to really go back and stop dreaming of a new future, a sustainable future with the means we have today, but shut down. Let's keep the people outside. Let's just like stay here with just a small community of people. Imagination. The imagine community. So here, let's go to the keyword in this lecture. So neo-tribal or online tribal, as I was speaking about here. We have an author who helps us a lot to go through it. She is reflecting in her chapter about nationalism in the 21st century, so today, in between of two extremes, neo-tribal on one side and plural on the other side. So she writes, it is my contention that in this 21st century context of liquid identity and multicultural connectedness, here I think unfortunately she used the essentialist use of culture as nation. Here I would say maybe just heterogeneous, yeah, or global, maybe she wants to say, global connectedness and conception. Nationalism re-emerges with new forces, filling the cracks of a liquid modernity. However, it does so in different ways. It can propose neo-tribal identities that seem to restore the certainty and solidity of the past, or it can acknowledge uncertainty and liquidity and create a nuanced and complex multi-scalar sense of belonging that acknowledges mixity and interdependence. Yeah, so either you accept the variety of our society, which is not just connected with migration, obviously, but so many different, so a huge variety is in our society, because we learn to develop and to express ourselves in our unique way. Yeah, so either we learn to deal with it in a positive way, or we try to shut down, yeah, and try to keep our small group of homogeneous people, which is a fantasy. We need to analyze new waves and discourses of shamanist, populist nationalism, or of transnational universalist solidarity and of mixed belonging along a continuum that ranges from, as we said, plural nationalism, an open form of nationalism that acknowledges diversity, interacts with it, and eventually embraces and synthesizes a new national configuration, and on the other side, neo-tribal nationalism, a reactive form of nationalism that is exclusionary, based on the construction of an authenticity and homogeneity that is organic and doesn't change. Yeah, so this fantasy of something homogeneous and fixed. In contrast to plural nationalism, interactive and dialogical relationship with diversity and others, neo-tribal nationalism is predicated on a rejection of diversity. So nationalism, we've seen, is always a bit dangerous. So, but at least there are people who are performing their nationalism, countries who are performing their nationalism in a way in which is very open to diversity. Now, an example is Canada. An example is also Denmark. There is a great spot I will link at the end of my presentation so they can watch it. So the nation is represented as a compact unit that does not allow for variation or change. The only way to deal with challenges of mobility and diversity is to close ranks and resist and reject it. No? So you notice what happens, for example, for people trying to escape from their reality, which actually Europe is very much responsible of, not just in the time of colonialism, but also in the imperialist time nowadays, continuing them. So we close our frontiers, we don't respect the international agreements in relation to human rights, yeah? So we just feel we have to reject them, even if actually, even in an economical perspective, under an economical perspective, we should accept migrants, because European societies really need people working. So even if not on a moral level or and just on a very how I say concrete level of what do I earn out of it, or what do I lose, yeah. Then also on this, actually under this perspective, is a crazy thing. What we are doing, keeping people outside the borders, letting them falter and and have horrible experiences of die in the Mediterranean, for example. Okay, so the idea is that we have to resist and reject the enemy, yeah, the dangerous one, or the ones who wants to change our society or could bring illnesses or unsafety and so on. So neo-tribal nationalism bears within its seeds of nativist sentiments, and it also rejects immigrants and others, and reacts to diversity through exclusion and closure. Neo-tribal nationalism, however, differs from nativism in that it relates again not just to immigrants or minorities within the nation state, but also to real perceived others outside. Okay, so what happens online? So online, we have seen it's not another world, it's our extended reality. What happens online is that you get great chances to meet other people from other parts of the world, collaborate with them, and so on, as we are doing now, for example. On the other side, you have also the possibility to observe, as a researcher or a student, observe this kind of racism, racist discourses online. And as a normal citizen, you have the possibility to just join them. Yeah. Obviously criticizing them, but also join them in a way, reproducing these discourses. So we come with to talk about hate speech. Hate speech is not something which is new. It's not something that started with the new media, the so-called new media. But in the new media, they take another dimension because of what we have said of anonymity, for example. But there are also other factors which play a role on it, which I cannot go deeper into. Though here, let's see what hate speech is. Hate speech is conscious and willful public statement intended to denigrate a group of people. Yeah, but as European Commissions define, it's also not just like when I'm speaking about a plural group of people, but also when I speak against one person because of its membership to a certain group. Yeah. It's manifested verbally, non-verbally, and symbolically. It's though difficult because sometimes it's very ambiguous and is expressed in metaphorical term, and also is expressed in negative stereotyping, which are socially accepted. You think of words you use or expressions you use. Even if I work on these topics a lot, so I reflect a lot on the way I talk. A couple of days ago, I observed a new way of saying that I actually have been using without noticing how racist and discriminatory it is. Yeah, so try yourself to observe your own wordings. So often you don't even know that hate speech because it's so normal, and presupposes others having malicious or misleading intentions. So hate speech is not just like because I'm using these horrible wordings, but it's so otherwise it would be hate speech the whole time. So hate speech is a specific, it's racism for sure, but it's not hate speech. Hate speech is hate speech when there is an intention, behind it. Hate speech occurs in the sphere that Western societies provide for freedom of expression. So freedom of expression is super important and super good, and we have to watch out if we think, okay, we should just stop. No, when I was analyzing this whole chat, I was like, oh my gosh, we should close down these places. Yeah, I was really thinking, oh, that's not going to work. I mean, that's horrible what's happening here. We should just like shut down social media and we should shut down internet. I don't know. I was dreaming about that, but then it's obviously crazy. It's not possible. And it's so important to have this freedom of expression. Yeah, so we have to really be careful and find smarter ways to deal with it. Hate speech is also a mean of intimidation, of power, and hate speech establishes and reproduces, for example, online social hierarchies, of inequality and domination. So it's not like it's just horrible. It's not like that's just like that, but it's also horrible because it is helping to produce and reproduce and making strong this kind of racist discourses. So Frogelaar and me have been doing this study, observing actually not comment section anymore, because nowadays they are not used anymore, but platform, social media platform of different newspapers. And we have been living there. So we have really been living these chats some hours every day for some hours, which was quite hard. And here I brought some examples. You can look at them then the local campus more quietly. I would just like go through so that you know what it is about. Here is, for example, a news which impacted me very much, because it was a neighbor shot a young guy. He was 16. He shot him and he shot him, excuse me, and what people were discussing about is like, because this guy didn't have a typical German name, who knows what this guy did, you know? So the whole chat was about, also not everyone, but most of the people were like really wondering, what did this guy to deserve that? And that's just because he was called, he wasn't called Hans or Jan or something. You know, here is the chat you can look at. Oh, that's a short part of the chat. Here is very interesting because it shows how the newspaper itself create a framework for specific racist discourses. For example, this news, even if they're like the same time, more or less, I could find it again online. This I couldn't find it anymore. So, and it's not one. It's not. I'm not surprised about that because I was very surprised to see that he's a news. Yeah, this it wasn't sure. So people here, they were the newspaper. The newspaper is the Bild Zeitung, which is the most read newspaper in Germany, and it's a tabloid. Really working very much in emotion in people, creating strong feelings, polarizing people. So here's about the police in Cologne are looking for these two guys who might have robbed another person. Yeah, but I mean, this happening the whole time in the city that people robs other person. I mean, it's not new, unfortunately. But why is now in whole Germany people are like looking for them? They're even under 18, and it's not even sure they have done that. And the fact that there is not the article anymore might be also confirmation of the word, but it's not important. Yeah, but there is a news. Why? Because they are not blonde and blue-eyed. That is actually the point, and that you see it in the chat. There's a chat in which you really see how this users, which are very, very much, and for sure many have fake accounts and some are bots, but most are also people really supporting each other and really saying always the same jokes. And you see how you really create a culture. No? They have always the same topics. No? For every news at the end of the 6 weeks, I could know, okay, they will say this and this and this. So it's very predictable what they're going to say there. And they are all very harmonic. So actually, itself is much nicer to be in this chat than in chat of other newspapers where people are more aware about complexity of things. And then one says one aspect and the other say, yeah, but wait a moment, you should also consider that. And it's not really precise how you express, you should say like that, which is very interesting, but it's emotionally it's very stressful because people are like kind of fighting against each other. At least for me, it was sometimes stressful. But here, what is said, the contents are horrible. So at the end of the week, I usually had to cry very much and let this inhumanity get out of me. But itself, the chat was super harmonic. We were super friends. They were all like liking each other, thumbs up, and just like, you know, supporting as I shortly read here so that you understand. They're supporting each other. So, oh, that's Peter and Hans, which are typical German name. No, that's a very common joke. Ask at the immigration office in a real country, everyone is registered with photos, DNA, and fingerprints. There's no in a real country. There is no way they stop smiling. Why should they? Nothing will happen to them, no matter what they've done. On the contrary, they will laugh their heads off at the German justice system. Get out with your feet. There is no other language. Other countries, other customs. Also, their accounts were just all criminal, and then they come here. It's fantasy. I hardly think so. Even if they are found, a sentence which is unlikely to happen will make them laugh even more. When they are 14, otherwise not much happens, are always traumatized and can't help it. Oh, Gunther and Michael, the rascals. I don't think so. Traumatized as always. Klaus and Peter. What a world we've gotten since the open borders. Welcome. Once again, two blonde youngsters from the far north. Who else? Yeah, and that goes on and on. So I show you here. I just took apart, but you can read it shortly. And it's amazing how people are really supporting each other and strengthening their racist perspective on life, making invisible all the complexity there is beyond things. Like, if these guys did something, why did they do it? What is the problem? It's for sure not a nationality which is the problem. Yeah, it's not a culture, a national culture or whatever, a religious culture or whatever culture is a problem. There might be issues of marginalization, for example, which have to do with the fact that they are excluded because people are afraid of them. They are and people don't give them a work, or don't give their rights, don't give them the permission to go to school, don't give them permission to work, and so on and so on. So marginalization is a problem. So let's talk about that. Let's get angry about that. Let's unite about that. Let's work on it. Let's find solutions so that people are not marginalized, for example. Yeah. So as the example I did before with sexism, let's not just like project some problems on some people and makes us free of that problem. We just like delete that people. But let's see that problem is much more transversal, and not just a group have it, and this group just all people have a problem, but the problems are very transverse, and we have to look at them and not like use scapegoats. Yeah. So there was it's very clear in these chats a real harmonic exchange usually. They build their own culture and feeling of belonging. Yeah. So tribal nationalism is put in place in an online community very well, because in online communities you can really find people who think in a very simple way and can very simply just get angry about things and support each other and feel more and more that they are thinking in the right way, because everyone are thinking the same way. So the imaging community feels real. You are in a community where all believe the same, and it feels true. Yeah. So the imaging community, the first point I want to make is this imaging community, the nation, which is, as said, is a construction of many different people, which we suddenly think we are all the same and homogeneous against the other. So in this kind of chats where we're all discussing about that, about how our nation is threatened by the others, then it really feels true, because here we're really in a community, an online community, supporting each other. Yeah, so that it becomes more and more dangerous, no? Because it's in a normal context you can have situation where all things the same thing about people stigmatized as strangers. But online, it's even easier, yeah, to get closed into your bubble, and you are in a community where all believe the same, so it feels true, and prejudices and hate against the other stays with you. So what you read there, and for this reason, it's important to go into this space and really bring other kind of thoughts into it and help people to distantiate from this simple, banal thinking. So, but what you read there, comes with you and stays with you. And so that when you go out of your door, so maybe it's not so surprising that you will treat other people badly, because the whole time you read about how dangerous these people are for you, for your community. So you should do something. At least you can be happy if someone treats you bad, if you don't do it yourself. Yeah, so that is, we have to be very, very aware of what is happening online, because what is happening online is something we carry with us. And if we feel there, if we are there in these bubbles in which we are pumped, with this hate, with these fears, and at the same time we feel part of a community which we want to support and to protect, then we can really become dangerous, in our small acts and in our bigger acts, and that justice, so for example, justifying or electing government who do very much for perpetuating exclusion or for strengthening it. Okay, so now the question is, and you still have a little bit of time to discuss in your in a international group. Think of your own context. Yeah, what happened and what happens? How happens? Who is othered in your context? Excuse me. who is other and how does the othering take place on social media? Yeah, so reflect now out of your own experience, in your context, who are the enemies, who is other, and how does this othering is perpetuated through social media. Maybe you have some examples, maybe you have for sure you have done experiences on social media, but also outside. You can tell your group members about. So thank you very much for your attention. Now you get some time for reflection, and then we meet again for closing our lecture. Bye-bye.